and I'm going to post this, is an abbreviated version of the following. So, the topic is using the technique of completing the square, and the objective is, by the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to write a circle equation in the standard form. I'm getting ready to work out 2 examples for you. You've got to be able to do this, and I just don't feel like you're ready. So one last time, I'm telling you to be appropriate. Okay, and it goes like this. Here's an example. So, your job, and I've taught this before, so this is like a mini lesson, but I don't think we did it justice. We're going to write x squared plus y squared minus 16x plus 24y plus 172 equals 0 in the standard form. Right now it's called the general form. From the standard form, we're going to be able to tell what the center and the radius is. So, the first step, and this is like a mini lesson. Step 1, you've got a group. This is just a word, it's like a hint. You're going to group. Now, there's 3 things we're going to do. And by the way, what's the most famous grouping symbol in algebra? Parentheses. Now, when I say you're going to group, that means you're going to group the x terms together and the y terms together. And at the same time, you're going to make sure the constant term, the term without the letter, is on the other side. So I go through and I put an open parenthesis, and I put the x terms together, so there's x squared, and I go a little bit further, and I see 16x with a minus in front, so I put minus 16x. I just grouped the x terms. I'll put a plus sign, and I put another open parenthesis, and I do the same thing with the y terms. So that gives me y squared plus 24y. Close the parenthesis. At the same time, I'm going to move the constant term to the other side of the equal sign. And when you ever switch sides, you just change the sign. So instead of plus 172 on the left side, it becomes negative 172 on the right side. Because what we actually did was we put minus 172 there, minus 172 there. So that's the first step. It's a handful. Step 2 is the plus blank step. Now, if you're wondering what in the world is that, here it is. What you're going to do is you're going to add a number, a plus, a blank to each parenthesis. So it looks like this. And I wouldn't write too big because you're going to need your space. X squared minus 16x plus blank, close parentheses, plus y squared plus 24y plus another blank. And according to the properties of equality, if we add 2 blanks to the left side, to keep this a balanced true equation, we have to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to add 1 blank plus another blank. Because whatever I add to one side of the equal sign, I got to add the same thing to the other side of the equal sign. Now that's not the entire step, because I just put plus blanks. I got to fill in those blanks. I have to fill that in. So the way you fill this in is you go to the coefficient of the term just to the left, the B term. Okay, I did ask you about that food. Please, it's so disruptive. Do you mind I'm recording this? Put that away. So you go to the term just to the left, and the coefficient is negative 16. I don't worry about the negative because I'm going to square anyway. But I'm going to take half of the coefficient by dividing by 2 and squaring it. Now 16 divided by 2 is 8. But we're going to square that. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is... And that's what goes in the first blank. I put this here so you know where the 64 came from. By the same token, I got to fill in this blank. And I go to the number directly to the left, which is 24. Cut the 24 in half by dividing by 2. And what do I do with that result? Square. So 24 divided by 2 is just going to be 12, and I got to square that. 12 times 12 is 144. That's what goes in this blank. Well, guess what? Whatever you add to the left side, you better add the same thing to the other side. 64 and 144. There we go. That's the plus blank step. Now the very last step. The last step, I need some space here, but the last step is to factor. Now that might not mean a lot to you if you don't remember your Algebra 1, but whenever you take half of that 16 and square it, or half of that 24 and square it, you've created a perfect square trinomial. And the perfect square trinomial can be factored into a binomial squared. And this is how you do it. To factor, all you got to do is the following. Take the square root of the first term you're going to use the first sign, and then finally you take the square root of the third term. You can even say the last term. You're going to close the parentheses off and square it. Write that down, and I'm going to show you how to use it. I'm going to show you how to actually put it into use. So now that you copied it down, let me show you exactly what this looks like. You go to the first parentheses. See the first parentheses? In that parentheses, the first term is x squared. It says take the square root of that first term. Well, what do you think the square root of x squared is? Yeah, whenever you square root something that's squared, a square root and a square are inverse operations, so therefore they cancel each other out. The squared cancels out the square root, and the square root cancels out the squared, so you're just left with plain old x. It says first sign. Well, to the right of that is your first sign. What is that going to be? So put a minus, and you go to the last term. That means when you hit that parenthesis, that's the last term. And if you don't know what the square root of that term is, because you take the square root of the last term, go over here. It's 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. And then you close off that parentheses and square it. Then you put a plus, open parentheses, and do the same thing for this quantity. The first term is y squared, so what's the square root of y squared? Y. The first sign you come to is a plus, so that's what you use right there. And you go to the last term and square root that. Now we all know the square root of 144 is 12, because 12 times 12 is 144. That's what I put here. Square that. Equals. You grab your calculator and work that out for me. It's 36. That is, just add those. That is called the vertex, that's called the standard form. From the standard form, you could state the center. The center is just a coordinate. It's got an x component to it, and it's got a y component to it. So if you want to know what goes in the x position, look at the x quantity. It's right there. What's the opposite of minus 8? And then if you want to know what goes in the y position, look no further than the y quantity. And the opposite of plus 12 is? And if you ever want to know the radius, it's always the square root of whatever number that is. If that's a 36, then the radius is the square root of that. And we all know, because somebody just told us 3 times, that the radius is 6. But the radius is the square root of that number, because that number is always the radius squared. So you were able to extract the center and the radius from an equation that was originally in what they call the general form. That, I think, deserves explanation. Example 2. Let's try one more. Here you go. X squared plus y squared minus 32x plus 30y plus 475 equals 0. Take a second, try that on your own, and then I'll let you struggle, and then I'll come back and work it out. I'm going to pause this. Okay, in the course's problem, I'll answer your question. Step 1, remember, step 1 was to group. All you had to do is rearrange by using the commutative property by changing the order. I'm going to group. What do I group? X squared with the minus 32x. Well, hold on a second. How many of you did that so far? Okay. Then you put plus. We're going to group the y terms. You got a y squared. Then you have a plus 30y. So I grouped, with parentheses, the x terms together. I grouped the y terms together. But at the same time, I don't want the term without a variable, which we call the constant, on the left side. I want it on the right side. Switching sides, I just switch its sign to negative 475. How many of you got that first step right? Raise your hand. Okay, anybody see your mistake? Okay. Now is the plus blank. what I wanted you to do, I'm gonna skip a line so it doesn't look so crowded. But what I wanted you to do was I wanted you to just put x squared minus 32x plus blank. And then we're going to go y squared plus 30y plus another blank. Close off the parentheses. At the same time, keeping in mind the properties of equality, which states, be prepared. Whatever I add to the left side, and I'm going to be adding two numbers, so I may as well just be prepared to add the two numbers. I got to add the same two numbers on the right side. Ah. How many of you got that right so far? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay. All right. To fill in this blank, you go to the number just to the left, which is 32. Now, you could divide that on paper, but when you cut it in half and divide by 2, you got to square the result. Now, 32 divided by 2 is 16. But we know 16 squared is going to be... So I fill that in with 256. Big numbers, small numbers, so what? You got a calculator. To fill this blank in, you go to the term just to its left, and it's 30. You take 30, cut that in half, and we all know half of 30 is 15. But when you have 15 squared, that's 15 times 15, which is... And guess what you fill in right there? Awesome. Now, if you're going to add 256 and 225 to the left side, please. 256, 225 to the right side. And now is the fun part. And the way you factor, please, please pay attention. The way that's factored is like this. Open parenthesis. You take the square root of the first and the third term. Well, the square root of x squared is just x. Always use the very first sign you come in contact with. If that's a minus, which it is, then you got to put a minus. And the square root of the last term, which is 256, we already did it right there. It's 16 times 16, so we just write 16. But the difference is you have to square that. I'm going to show you why in a second. Plus, open parentheses, do the same thing for this quantity. The square root of the first sign, square root of the last. Well, the square root of 225 is 15. Close it, square it. And that equals the sum of whatever that's going to be.
6.
It's what?
6.
Okay. So guess what? When you state the center, the reason for the standard form is because it tells you could extract the center. You know, the center has an x and a y coordinate. Just look at the x quantity. What's the opposite of minus 16? Look at the y quantity. What's the opposite of plus 15? And the radius is whatever that is, but the square root of that. And it's done. Now, let me give you a little bit of enrichment. Sometimes it's nice to know why something is the way it is. But I want to show you, I just want to show you, I mean, it's not crucial for the lesson per se, but it's an enrichment for you. But look at y plus 15 squared. You see that? Y plus 15 squared? If you really think about it, this is just a side note. If you have y plus 15 squared, you do realize that's the same thing as y plus 15 times y plus 15 if you expand that due to the fact that you got a squared there. And if you remember anything from algebra, you should remember FOIL, distributive property, like y times y times 15. Then you multiply through by 15. 15 times y. And then 15 times 15. And then when you add 15 and 15, you get 30. So it's y squared plus 30y plus 225. Everything you do comes from somewhere. So, did anybody get that one right? Okay, that was my little mini lesson. What I'm going to ask you to do is the following. How many of you have this paper already? Oh, you can't. Here. How many of you have this paper already? Anybody? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to print this off. I'm going to give you buku points. You don't know what buku means, but...
Go ahead. Oh, it's black out. I tried.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to try those problems. I'm going to stop this.